a little better, I suppose, if the accident even happens to land in my podcast or the YouTube video. I'm gonna chop off the front of this, but I'm gonna leave all of this in. Anyway. Hello, I'm Mayor Watt. That's my site. That's ohmTown.com. It's a news aggregation site. Throws a whole bunch of news into six main categories: create, news, education, entertainment, social, and technology. From there, I grab about 20 headlines from the last 24 hours and I talk about that in the context of business, technology, and society. Pretty simple in concept, but man, trying to get this locked down to a time frame. I wish that I could say that I am out of the woods, but tomorrow I will be back to the 11 o'clock, the 11 a.m. Time frame. With only one exception, I might have to push it to 1 p.m. Eastern. Unfortunately, as mayor, I have 1,000 bosses, and I get pulled in different directions. I hope to mitigate that this summer and basically lock it down to 1 p.m. every day, right in the middle of the day. Everybody can take a lunch break and come and hang out and talk about the news. So with that in mind, let's just get into today's news. There's a lot of talk going around in different directions, but some very serious. I don't necessarily want to get into all of that kind of stuff every episode, but it sometimes happens. The reason why I clicked this is because I had heard about this a while back, and it just came into the aggregator recently because I've made it public and I just figured I'd talk about it. There was an actual a book called How to Murder Your Husband, Who Murdered Her Husband. Yeah, I guess she didn't get away with it. So if you read the book, just know that the author of How to Murder Your Husband has been convicted of. She said prosecutors had sketched a flawed plotline. Har har. Okay, so this is over at the New York Times, and I just thought that it was interesting and sad. So the 71-year-old romance novelist who wrote a book called How to Murder Her Husband, and the prosecutors convicted her. So pretty simple, right? This is an article over at the NewYorkTimes.com by Mike Baker. And it says here in the article, the very first paragraph is basically a romance novelist who wrote about how to murder your husband was convicted in her husband's killing on Wednesday following a contentious trial in which prosecutors leaned on a puzzle, quote unquote puzzle, of circumstantial evidence to portray the author as a duplicitous spouse who spent months quietly plotting the perfect crime. Nancy Brophy, 71. Murdering somebody at 71. I mean, why at any? This is all about, I've talked about it before, it's all about failed coping skills, failed options, just countless other things that I'm sure apply to some level. It never excuses violence, but understanding how somebody gets to this point can help society lean towards just solving the problem, because out of the gate, most people aren't equipped to deal with stress or mental issues, right? So if we have something that is going on with us and we don't have a means or even a modicum of processes in place, systems in place that allow somebody to approach mental health as an option instead of having to suppress all of their issues, whatever it might be, because it's seen as being a weakness. Well, maybe our mental issues that exist in the world across a broad spectrum would eventually be mitigated because we'll have tools and we'll equip people to figure out how to deal with these things. And I'm not even going to, say, oh, well, I am the font of mental wellness, because I haven't been stressed by the same things that so many other people are being stressed by, stressed to the point where they break. Well, doing something like this requires something to break, because it isn't standard issue that somebody says, hey, you know what I'm going to go do? I'm going to conspire to delete my spouse. Anyway, 71 years old, stood quietly, a pandemic mask covering her nose and mouth as the verdict was handed down 7 weeks after the trial began in Portland, Oregon. Wow, prosecutors had built the case with evidence showing that Ms. Brophy had acquired gun pieces in the months before the killing of her husband, Daniel Brophy, including one extra component that prosecutors said could ensure that the bullets used in the shooting could not be traced back to her gun. Prosecutors contended that Ms. Brophy shot her husband in his workplace, where there would be no cameras or witnesses, then moved to collect on lucrative life insurance policies in the days that followed. She had the plan in place. Wow. Well, you can read more about this. Obviously, there was something going on. And it goes into greater detail about exactly how she did it and what. Why doesn't even matter. It just doesn't matter, because nobody should turn to violence to solve their problems. And this is at every single level of that phrase. You should never have to turn to violence to solve your problems. You should be able to defend yourself, yes. But context matters. Context really matters. Let's go on to the next article. Did I throw either of the ones that I'm about to talk about? Okay, so let's throw this one into the chat. There you go. Again, it'll be in the show notes for everybody who's not watching this or wants to follow the links. It'll be in the show notes. Okay, so the next article is over in the Smack Talk channel. Apple to increase starting pay for hourly workers to $22 per hour. Apple has begun notifying employees that it will increase the starting pay for hourly workers to a minimum of $22 per hour, with other markets seeing even higher wages. Interesting. Let's click the link. Let's get this moving, because I actually have a required appointment that I have to attend. Yeah. Amber Neely is the article's author over at Apple Insider on about this article. Apple issued a statement to employees on Wednesday informing workers that it would be increasing its hourly wages for retail employees. That's great. That's great. Everybody should be doing this. We're talking about inflation. We're also talking about perhaps making a career of doing what people are doing here, instead of getting them just a drip, a little quantum of compensation for their time. And it's these people, you've got engineers, you got computer scientists, you've got the various people that make the product. And then there's, on the other side, people that are selling the product and supporting the consumers at the stores. And they're just as valuable as others. Obviously, to some, they're going to be valued more or less, depending on which side of the fence you're on. But for crying out loud, trillion-dollar company, you'd think that maybe a little bit more could be given to the very people that are in the front lines of selling and supporting a product and its services. I don't know if you've never been to an Apple store. It isn't a slouch in terms of the amount of people in the store that are engaged with the consumers that are there. I mean, it's particularly on during periods of the release of new products, or ramping up towards the release of new products. it's usually a zoo. And every time I've ever gone into an Apple store, it's been a zoo. So the boost to $22 per hour marks a 45% increase over 2018's wages. Salaried positions are also expected to increase. Great. You know, a little bit smaller margin, and the many people that are supporting this enterprise makes for a healthier, happier employee base. Everybody should be doing this. Y'all don't need to be billionaires. Y'all just don't need to be billionaires. And we're watching the creation of oligarchs, American oligarchs, influencing politics with their wealth and driving their particular ideology. That's my take. Let's continue on. The next article is over in Tabletop Nights. Deck Builder RPG Gordian Quest releases for PC on June 23rd. I have not seen any of this. It says it's been in early access for several years. Come on, click the link. So it says Gordian Quest is a deck builder game with 10 playable heroes, 4 story acts. Interesting. Procedurally generated maps. Well, that's awesome. And hundreds of skills that promise to make each playthrough unique. The game features a roguelike mode, a campaign mode, as well as a PvP mode. So roguelike is very popular. You die, you make yourself better, you die, you make yourself better, you die. A new gameplay trailer is over on YouTube. Announcement and screenshots are below via Mixed Realms. You can go and check it out over at rpgsite.net, and the article is written by Adam Vattel. And it looks like it's $22. So, it'll increase to $22, but it's $20 right now, so 10% off. Not bad. I'm probably going to go and check it out. It's not exactly my style of game, but I'm always interested in something new and interesting. I've been playing V Rising lately, and it's a lot of fun. And everybody should go and check out V Rising as well. But that's not what this article is about. Right, Merwatt? Okay, let's continue on. The next article is about Niantic. Or is it Niantic? Anyway, I think it's Niantic. Niantic is bringing its large-scale AR positioning system to WebAR 2. This week, Niantic announced Lightship VPS, a system designed to make possible accurate localization of AR devices at a large scale to enable location-based AR content to also be persistent and multi-user. While the first implementation of the system will need to be baked into individual apps, the company says it's bringing the tech to WebAR 2. With the launch of Lightship VPS, Visual Positioning System, Niantic is staking its claim in the AR space by offering up an underlying map on which developers can build AR apps that are tied to the real-world locations. Being able to localize AR apps to real-world locations means apps can have persistence. I'm just going to leave it there because my aggregator chops it off. But what it really means is you could put computerized elements virtual elements inside real-world space, and you can see them through AR glasses or through a phone that has Lightship VPS in place. Awesome. I absolutely love this. They have a great game, a couple of games, but I don't play them. I just don't get out and about as often as I want to, and I kind of exist inside virtual space to begin with. But I love the idea of one day being able to just put on glasses and see AR, augmented reality elements wherever I want to look. And basically, I can see, things that are computer generated. If I want to see a Pokemon, I could just open up an app that activates the Pokemon in my AR existence, and when I walk around I can actually see and interact with Pokemon or something else. And Niantic has kind of like a web, it's like a hacking game where you have to hack nodes and do certain things. It was fun for me when it first started, and I was really into it at the very beginning of it. But I tend to have an attention span of a goldfish, even though that's not a true metaphor. Okay, anyway, let's continue on. This article is over at Road to VR, and one of my favorite sites for obtaining information about VR, AR. And this article is by Ben Lang over at roadtovr.com. And they have a video, so you can go over and check it out, or you can go over to YouTube and check it out as well. But my link will take you over to roadtovr.com, where you can read the rest of this. But really, the nuts and bolts of the article is that Niantic's Lightship VPS system can be integrated into your apps and turn your app into an AR kind of super tool. It'll be an amazing experience once this is more built into more apps that take advantage or have the ability to exploit this interface between augmented reality and reality. You don't get motion sickness with AR, even remotely close to what VR causes. And the reason why VR causes it is because your inner ear, your eyes are disconnected from the reality of what you're doing in VR space. And so where your feet land aren't necessarily where your feet land in VR. When you turn your head, your eyes aren't tied to the same fidelity that your inner ear is reacting to you turning your head. So there's a disconnect, and that's what causes that motion sickness. And you take Dramamine to fix that motion sickness. It's the exact same tool. But with time, you get over it. And you get over VR sickness is what I call it. Others have called it. But I'm not sure if there is a better term for it other than motion sickness. So Lightship VPS for web. Yep, let's bake it into more apps and spin up more apps and have interface in the real world with augmented reality. I love the idea of it. And so that's why it's in this channel called Reality Hacker, which is really all about merging and making hyper-realistic modifications to real-world space, but it's all computer-generated. Okay, so let's continue on. The next article is in the Word in Tech. Tangle-free magnetic USB cables are here. Say what? Okay, so what if your cable could magnetically stick to itself, form a neat coil that doesn't get all floppy and tangled in your drawers and bags? What if they were good cables too? Capable of charging and syncing things all over, USB-C, Lightning, more. Well, you can now buy USB cables that do the first part, and they're cool enough that the author really wished cable manufacturers would figure out the rest of that. They are a little more colorful in how they describe it, but this is Sean Hollister over at The Verge and demonstrating this VR cable, or not VR cable, what am I talking about? Magnetic cable. And I think it's really more about a bunch of magnets that are wrapped around the cable. So yeah, it's just magnets that are wrapped. They have a hole and the cable is run through it. I think it's great, but it's going to be grabbing onto all kinds of stuff around you. But still neat. Still neat. I don't know about the quality of the cable though. I really don't like any of the cables that have the short connector right out of the, it's a strain relief right off of the connector. Not a big fan of that. Because if you don't teach somebody the right way to coil up and untangle or uncoil a cable, this little stubby thing, it's going to break right there at the base of that stubby portion. It's going to twist inside and it's going to break the cable inside, because some people just don't learn how to coil up and uncoil a cable. It's not as simple as just grabbing an end and pulling. You actually have to roll it between your fingers to uncoil it, or let it all just uncoil at once. It's just not that simple. Maybe I can demonstrate it sometime. I don't have a cable here that isn't attached to something. I really don't. I wish I did. I'm looking around. Cables everywhere, but not one I can detach. If I detach something right now, something in orbit might fall out of the sky. That's not true. It's a little hyperbolic there, Mayor Watt. Anyway, I love the idea of this. I love a magnetic connector to begin with, particularly if I can leave a little stub inside a device and then just magnetically attach it. But then you have to have that magnetic connector, otherwise nothing really works. You have to connect by that. So I'm stuck, but I love this idea. It says this USB-C to USB-C one was pretty decent at charging, giving 65 watts of USB-C PD. So this is a smart connector that kind of supercharges. It's pretty neat. I have this in a device that I'm building right now. It's actually sitting right there. It's really neat. It's not high tech, but it uses high tech stuff in it. I'm looking at my video here. Anyway, the gadget is right there. Oh, I wish I could show you. I just can't though. Oh my gosh, I want to. I really do. I want to. Handmade. I've got a bunch of them. I want to sell them, but they're right there. Oh, well, one of them is right there. All it does is sit on your desk though. But it's fascinating. It's really cool. You'll see them later. Anyway, tangle-free cables. We'll see. I'll hunt them down, and I'll probably order some because I have to anyway. I had somebody here in ohmTown who had a cable plugged in, and it caught fire. Well, it started smoking, and where there's smoke, there's fire. So let's continue on with the next article. Luckily, it was cotton time and thrown away. And it was because people twist and they pull on the cable instead of unrolling the cable. Again, maybe we can talk about it. Okay, so this next article is in the Hatch Ideas channel because it has to do with business, although not everything business related is always in the Hatch Ideas channel. A Mississippi restaurant repaid $169,000 to workers who got less than minimum wage, the DOL said, Department of Labor here in the United States. A Mississippi restaurant paid some kitchen workers less than minimum wage, the DOL said. It also failed to prove to investigators that it had paid cash wages to 2 servers, and the restaurant paid $168,864 in back wages and damages to 17 workers, according to the DOL. Let's click this link, and it says Super King Buffet, a Chinese and Japanese buffet in Hattiesburg, violated the Fair Labor Standards Act by paying some kitchen employees a monthly wage. This is an article over at businessinsider.com by Grace Dean. And let's see here. I'm curious. A monthly salary that pushed their average hourly pay below below the federal minimum wage. Mississippi doesn't have a state minimum wage and instead uses the federal minimum wage of $7.25. Nowadays, that's a gallon of gas per hour. Yeah, that is just wildly out of line for the reality of living in the United States right now. If staff work more than 40 hours a week, their employees must also pay 50% overtime premium for those hours. Apparently, they didn't do any of that kind of stuff. Companies can pay tipped staff as little as $2.13 an hour, with tips bringing their take-home pay up to at least $7.25 an hour. All of that's just disgusting, and I pay. My tips are always more, and I don't know. This is just wild. And for some reason, I don't think that this is the total amount of benefit received by abusing these employees. And that is my problem. That right there is the real concern for me, is that abuse happens in the dark, and these people are willing to pay $169,000, 168 plus, so $169,000. But they probably got an order of magnitude more than that in overall benefit. Maybe not. I don't know. But I can bet that it's going to be more than that as benefit from abusing these people who, until the DOL got involved, were going to continuously be abused. So let's continue on. The next article is in the Hatch Ideas channel as well. First quarter GDP declined 1.5%, worse than thought. Jobless claims climbed. I mentioned jobless claims yesterday, maybe the day before. Let's just click the link so that we can get moving time-wise. And it's an article over at CNBC by Jeff Cox. One of these days I'll learn to log in. The pullback in gross domestic product represented the worst quarter since the pandemic scarred Q2 of 2020. Initial jobless claims totaled 210,000, a decline of 8,000 from the previous week. Yeah, people are still not out looking for whatever reason. They've got other solutions, but anyway. The pullback in GDP represented the worst quarter since the pandemic scarred Q2 of 2020. GDP plummeted 31.2% in that quarter. And if you look at the chart for GDP, I mean, it just tanks to 2008 era GDP. I think that's what I saw when I last looked at it. And now, and with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you've got food supply issues, you've got fuel supply issues, you've got geopolitical turmoil. Russia has control over other countries' resources, just like China does. That's causing constraints. It's really all about greed, though. I mean, okay, I won't get onto the soapbox. It says CNBC's Rapid Update survey shows a median expectation of 3.3% growth in the second quarter. And I always feel weird that somebody came out and espoused 3.3% growth as healthy growth, as if just staying static is bad. If you're staying static, that means that you're in stasis. You're in equal footing between consumption and production. You're not growing constantly. If you're growing constantly, all that means is that somebody is making money off of in the GDP, right? The gross domestic product. So really what's the purpose of that somebody came along and just dropped that out there? I hear that in other business practices. But business is sitting there demanding that you have dramatically higher growth, 10%, 20%, 30%. Why? Why does it have to be so dramatic every single year? Oh, well, it's to grow a business. Look, I understand the mechanics of running a business, and forcing this profit again, profit again, profit again, profit again is really greed. Break even, make your product, sell your product. It accounts for everything. If you want something marginally on the other side of that so that you can reinvest in research and development, the coffers of your business don't need to be $1 billion. Not unless your intent is to buy other businesses and fire a bunch of people so that you can make them more efficient, which is really a code for, well, exploit. The people that made that other business happen they got literally sold to somebody when the business gets purchased, and then people get fired. And so all of that hard work that somebody put in to help build a business now is somebody else's. And the one thing that made that possible was they had more money. That's why businesses need to be employee owned. That would be a shock if all of the employees that get hired actually own a portion of the business. Make it so that everybody has to vote to sell a business to somebody. At least everybody would have skin in the game. Everybody would have representation. Everybody really demands representation in government. Why not? Why isn't there demand for representation within a business or an enterprise of some kind? You know, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to sell my business without talking to employees and saying, hey, I'm about to sell this business. What do you need to feel secure in me selling that business? Other people might say, well, it's your business. You can do whatever, set fire to it. It doesn't matter. No, you are impacting other people without them even having any representation in it. What does that all have to do with GDP? Basically the same thing. GDP is representation of the actual growth of the economy. Why did somebody arbitrarily just set 3% as being the go-to number? Doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I know what I've been told. I know what it's supposed to represent, but why 3%? Just like the doubling of transistors in a processor doubles every 2 years. That's a business model. That's a standard of practice to drip out tech. Let's continue on. I mentioned a couple of days ago that Broadcom was talking to VMware, well, Dell, to buy VMware, and it looks like it's going to be done. Broadcom is acquiring VMware for $61 billion. It's one of the biggest tech acquisitions ever, behind Dell's $67 billion EMC deal and Microsoft's pending acquisition of Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion. Broadcom is known for its chip business. Well, now it's going to be noodling around with virtual machines and enterprise virtualization. This giant acquisition for VMware is designed to boost Broadcom's software business. VMware, which was owned by Dell, it was owned by Dell, and prior to Dell, it was owned by EMC, and prior to EMC, it was owned by itself. But it kind of moved really quick, last 15 years. Now it's owned by, or will be owned by, Broadcom. So let's click the link. At least we can go and look at who wrote this article. Tom Warren over at TheVerge.com wrote the article. It says it will be one of the biggest tech deals of all time. I think Bethesda is the next one. There's going to be a big Bethesda one coming, I think, if rumor serves me well. I think it's Bethesda. This giant acquisition for VMware is designed to boost a Broadcom software business. If you've used a virtual machine at work over the past decade, the chances are it was powered by VMware or its competitor Citrix. Interesting story about Citrix, but I'll save that for another time when I need something that might be a little bit more entertaining than this. Devices from Apple, Google, and more use Broadcom chips, and it's likely that the devices you've used Wi-Fi or Bluetooth were probably powered by Broadcom chips at some point in the network chain. Yeah, that's because they got patents. And they provide the solution at a reasonable price. So, okay, let's continue on. With bounty hunting law, Oklahoma enacts nation's first total ban on abortion. For the first time in nearly 50 years, abortion is illegal at every stage of pregnancy in an American state, with the head of Planned Parenthood Great Plains. So this is pitting person against person. It's amounting to a civil war, or let's So it's literally putting somebody else's ideological bent into a legal framework that allows them to hunt down other people that violate that ideological bent that now has become law. Now, hate to break it to everybody who thinks that abortion is a modern construction. It's not. It goes all the way back to BC times and has been documented. So it isn't something new. And the people that need it the most won't be able to take advantage of arbitrage locations where they can just pay more or leave the state temporarily, get the procedure done, come back, whatever. It's going to drive it into the shadows. People are going to be harmed. People are going to die. And you, the people that are voting for this type of bounty hunting law, which is twisted, will be able to sit there and say that your ideological bent means that the people that do this are nothing and can do it. If they die, so be it. They're nothing. That's what makes you think that you can do this, that you can justify driving this because of your ideological bent and nothing else. Nothing else. Well, this article's over at Common Dreams. I usually preface articles from Common Dreams where the article's title is very inflammatory. It's designed to drive you either to it or away from it, but the people who need to read this aren't going to go and read this. Modeled after Texas' similarly draconian ban, the Oklahoma measure is one of several increasingly extreme bills that state-level Republicans advanced following the leak of a draft opinion making clear the right-wing Supreme Court majority intention to overturn Roe v. Wade in the coming weeks. 50 years of precedent. And the way that I say it is, everybody who doesn't agree with this should move. Not out of, but into Texas, into Oklahoma. Change the ability for a minority population who wants this from seizing control. And it's a social movement. It has nothing to do with politics. The law is represented by the population. But in this loud, vociferous, vitriolic discussion has overshadowed, eclipsed rational discussion. All again because of an ideological bent, not based on fact, science, logic, context, anything other than ideological bent. And hell-bent on making it happen, while telling everybody that the other side is hell-bent on applying their ideology. Except that the other side of this coin is trying to be equitable, inclusive, empathetic, sympathetic, compassionate, open arms. While policy like this is siloing and marginalizing and oppressive, and only the ones, the people that they can tag as those people are going to be suffering. But that's not true. I can guarantee you that there are people that are voting against this, that if something happens to them, they'll still be able to justify having an abortion. And they'll do it in the dark somewhere. They won't come out and change. They won't say sorry. They won't change their attitude. But when they become a victim of something, or they have an oops, they'll be the first ones that are looking for a solution and probably leaving the state to get it done. You'll see. It'll happen. If Roe v. Wade switches. But this is all about balkanizing the United States, breaking it up so that we're all a bunch of states that, and we're all a bunch of people that just happen to be in states. And therefore, we have a law that applies to us that's only bound in that state. Yet we're bound to it. So much so that even if we leave the state for a procedure, if somebody in that state finds out that we had a procedure, they could sue us. And it's the people that are suing us, not the state. So therefore, but it's the law from the state that's enabling it. It's really twisted. It's pitting neighbor against neighbor. When was there another time in American history where we've had neighbor pitted against neighbor over an ideological bent? Oh, I know. We're not allowed to talk about it in schools. How fortunate for those who are pushing that type of agenda. Okay, so let's go on with the next article. I got to get off the soapbox, otherwise I won't make it to my meeting. Texas broadcast of Jimmy Kimmel's Uvalde. I think that's how it's pronounced, Uvalde. I haven't watched the news about this. Other than little snippets, I know exactly what went down. I know exactly who did it. I know the how many. I know the ages. It's all horrible, but this I heard subsequently to me bringing this up on in my aggregator, finding it in my aggregator, that it says in the monologue, Kimmel called the failure of lawmakers to take action on the issue indefensible. A bipartisan bill in the House was stalled because there could have been checks and balances in place, but an 18-year-old was able to get what one side believes shouldn't be called assault rifles, but people don't walk around with them as defensive weapons. They're designed for assaults on people, soldiers, military action, not hanging out at the range unless you just love throwing a bunch of lead down the range. Well, some people get off on that, but why did somebody have the ability to go buy two of these, at least two, from my understanding? Anyway, the broadcast in Texas of Jimmy Kimmel's monologue got cut short. Now, they say, and I'm talking about, it says, I do not know whether our ABC network affiliate WFAA cut away from my monologue tonight intentionally or inadvertently, but they'll find out. Well, they subsequently apologized and that it was a technical glitch. Well, a technical glitch that just happened to happen during that in a state that finds it contentious to talk about this kind of stuff. Right on. So this is an article over at The Hill by Monique Beals. And there's more to it here. It says they won't pass it because our cowardly leaders just aren't listening to us. They're listening to the NRA. They're listening to these people who write them checks, who keep them in power because that's the way politics work. Yeah. If we were to treat politicians like they were NASCAR drivers, you'd be able to see exactly who is being represented. And it only goes downhill from there. Some are trying to do good, but you can almost cut some of the bias with a butter knife. So I'm going to move past this, but I figured I'd let everybody know that this went down. I'm sure it was innocuous. Okay, so the next article is Delta says it will cancel about 100 flights a day in July and August to try to get ahead of a potential summer meltdown. Well, that's fortunate for them. What about all of the people that need to take these flights? The company said the decision was made to prevent a potential meltdown of its network this summer. JetBlue Airways and Alaska Airlines have also cut summer flying due to surging demand and staffing challenges. Delta Air is taking proactive measures to improve reliability ahead of the busy summer travel session. Really? Hold on a second. Let me check something. So let's see. If I'm reading this right, $18 million is the CEO's salary. Maybe some of that could be put into more flights, because it's really not. It's a machine at this point, right? You know how many people are traveling, you know how many vehicles you have, you know your destinations, you know the time frames that it takes, you know that how many people you have that are taking the flight and flying the planes. I'm not sure how $18 million in total compensation really will facilitate me being able to stretch my legs out without putting them in the chest of somebody in front of me. You sneeze on one seat and 3 rows in front of you are wiping the back of their head. That's how tight packed you are. Well, it's just like elasticity of demand. We still are required to take X, Y, and Z flights. And eventually we're going to end up standing for a flight with a tiny little seat just to barely hang our butts on, just so that we can take a flight somewhere at a reasonable cost, let alone first class. Oh my gosh. I'm going to continue on. The next article is imaging contrast dye shortage delays tests for diseases. Again, why is this? Many hospitals are postponing scans used to diagnose diseases after a COVID lockdown in China hobbled the main U.S. supplier. Again, why is this only being done in China to the point where it is hobbling the processes in the United States? If there is something going on where we're not able to facilitate that in the United States, what exactly is it? If you know about it, if you know what the issues are that cause this, where you can't even produce the imaging contrast dye in the United States at a reasonable cost, tell me why it's okay to do it in China for US consumption, but it's not possible in the United States for US consumption. Let's click the link. Takes us over to New York Times. I'm sure they'll talk about it to some degree, right? Mr. Quintos, 53, a Chicago resident, has constant stomach pain. He has been hospitalized, and his doctors have tried everything, including antibiotics, antacids, even removing his appendix, and he still doesn't feel good. Well, to get the procedure, he needs dye contrast so that they can see if there's something hinky going on, but apparently he can't do it. The shortages of a vital imaging agent is the latest example of country's vulnerability to disruptions in the global supply chain. So, without sitting there saying, I told you so, because you as listeners to this wouldn't know it, but a decade ago plus, no, it's when I got my MBA. So we're talking about 12, 13 years ago, coming up on 15 years. Well after I have been in business, I predicted this. I said that all it will take is something major or something politically charged that leads to China basically saying, we're not interested in supporting you in this way. And they turn off the spigot of consumables. Now, I didn't predict that it would be something like this in particular, where it's prefaced by a pandemic. But under no circumstances should this be an issue. Where in this pandemic are production of hospital grade materials being impacted by people who should be in a sterile environment wearing masks and producing the product? And really all of this should be automated. Many products are automated with no human hands until final packaging. Why is this happening? But I think that many countries are it's death by 1,000 cuts. supply issues all over the place, but companies are owned by other people, other countries, others, and it's impacting wherever you might be. It's impacting you domestically because there are people that are saying, let all of this crap happen. It's making us a metric ton of money. Sounds conspiratorial, right? But it's not conspiracy. It is sociopathy. It's greed. It's letting things go a particular path, even though if you were to lower your margins and spend your money on mitigating it and solving it, this would all have been remedied much sooner, because we would all have been seeing this as a horrible direction well before it became 2 years of pandemic and now supply chain issues. Why? Why is it like this? Because people were making record profits off of this crap. Okay, I'm going to continue on. I've got 5 more articles, and I'm here to send you some interesting news. And I just happen to soapbox a little bit. Again, it's not a rant. I'm not angry. Not angry. I'm what's a better phrase for it? I'm disappointed. The reason why I laugh is because I've had this conversation with others, and people say that's kind of like a dad phrase. I'm not angry with you, world. I'm disappointed. Okay, so I love this. I've always loved the Panasonic Toughbooks. Modular Panasonic Toughbook has 8 replaceable parts, 1200 nit screen. Toughbooks are durable designs meant to withstand long drops. These things have been around for a long time, like pre-2000. So I'd say like 30 years Toughbooks have been around. And they've kept on existing. You'll find these things out in the field. Engineers on oil rigs, you'll find them out in trenches where people are doing soil sampling. You'll find them everywhere. They're amazing pieces of equipment, and like it says here, military grade durability spec. Well, now they have swappable parts, but I think the amazing thing about all of this is that they weigh like 8 pounds still. They are just built to be run over by a tank. I love them. I won't ever spend $5,000 to get one, but maybe the price has dropped. Maybe it's $3,000. This article is over at arstechnica.com by Sharon Harding, and there it is. There's the Toughbook. Always has looked like this, where it seems like it's a tiny little screen wedged into a huge chunk of military grade reinforced framing, and the touchpad is always this tiny little thing that just seems entirely inappropriate for functionality. And you have to kind of you have to keep on zooming your finger back and forth like you're trying to do a scratch and sniff. But it works, and I really dig it. So now the Toughbook 40 has 8 parts that you can replace: keyboard, battery, storage, memory, expansion area on the left, and an expansion area on the right, and an expansion area in the rear, and an expansion area in the palm rest. Awesome. So maybe I'll get one of these. It says it's 7.4 pounds, the 14-inch Toughbook. It says Touchbook. Huh. Is that that must be a typo. Yeah, it's Toughbook. 40 is 1.2 pounds lighter than the preceding laptop, the 13.1-inch Toughbook 31. So it got an inch bigger and 1.5 pounds lighter. So kudos to, again, fundamental research leading to an outcome of material changes that make this possible. Now at 7.4 pounds, it's still way too heavy for me to carry around on the daily, unless it's the only thing I carry around. But for its functionality, you could use it as a chopping board. So Here's to the Culinary Institute. Let's deploy laptops, Toughbook laptops to the Culinary Institute. Make them multitask tools there. It can act like a hammer. It can act like, well, so many things come to mind. But let's move on. I am actually running behind. If you are here in my chat, say hi. Thanks for stopping by. If you're not in my chat, then I'll see you in the podcast. I'll see you in YouTube. But I got 4 more articles to go. So let's get into this. This is the home stretch, folks. How to become a writer, our complete guide. This is an article that's over at prowritingaid.com. I haven't talked about them for a while. They've been aggregating into ohmTown for a little while, but let's just click the link and take you over there. If you are interested in becoming a writer, go over to prowritingaid.com and read this article. It says how to become a successful writer or author. Not necessarily one and the same, but they talk about what makes a successful writer versus an author. And authors are published and writers are basically every writer is an author if it's been published. And every author is a writer. So it's kind of a logic thing. So all authors are writers, but not all writers are authors. And publishing means through a publishing service, not just writing a slide deck. So you'll have to brush up on your writing skills. You're going to have to learn some grammar and use a spell checker. Have somebody else review your materials, an editor or something else. Get somebody who might be passionate about you, but dispassionate about your writing, so that when they read your stuff, they have your best intentions and they destroy it grammatically. You want, I'm not at the point where I can actually do this, but at any rate, I have something that I want to share with you all, but I can't share it yet. I'm not ready to bring it to market. Anyway, you want somebody to destroy what you write so that you can become a better writer preemptively, because hiring an editor, a real editor, is expensive and time consuming. They usually do work for more than one person. So technical writing, business writing, grant writing, creative writing, and fiction writing, they talk about all of this in this really, really expansive article. And so I encourage you to go over to prowritingaid.com. This article is by Crystal N. Craker. I think it's Craker. It might be Craker. So if Crystal, if you ever hear this or somebody tells you that I've brought you up inside the ohmTown Daily News show, swing by, say hi. Okay, so the next article is Apple's digital state IDs are now available in Maryland for Maryland residents. I'm just going to click this link, and it'll take us over to The Verge. Apple's digital state IDs now available for Maryland residents. The push for digital cards is getting real. So I don't even carry any cards around anymore. The only card that I carry around is for security, for me to access things. And that's only because they don't have a solution yet for my watch. Basically that's it. I don't carry credit cards around. I don't carry cash around. I carry nothing of value, and nothing that you can take from me is functional once it's removed from my person. So really none of this matters. But now I don't even have to carry around a state ID. If I could do this with a driver's license, I'd be golden, but I don't. It's not available everywhere. So this is an article over at The Verge by Umar Shakir. Apple's Wallet app now supports Maryland state IDs and driver's licenses. Boom, done. Marking it as the second state after Arizona to gain the digital identification feature. Residents of the Free State can now use their iPhone or Apple Watch at certain TSA checkpoints at participating airports, including Baltimore Washington International and Reagan National. And now people are texting me that I'm running late. At any rate, the digital IDs aren't a replacement for physical ones, though. Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration, essentially, we call it the MVA in certain states on the East Coast. Other states around the nation call it DMV. So depending on where we are, it's DMV or MVA. Yeah. The website states that law enforcement does not accept Maryland mobile ID, meaning you'll still have to carry your wallet around for driving and even flying. For now, the only benefit of the digital ID is that your physical ID can remain tucked away at the selected airports. Awesome. And if you go through pre-flight stuff at airports and you qualify, you can actually kind of fast track through the airport and not have to have a body cavity search anymore. Yeah. So I don't know, if you're in a state where you can do this, go for it. I think it's brilliant. But I'll still have to carry around an ID no matter what anyway, right? So this next article is over in the Word in Tech. Scientists grow cells on a robot skeleton but don't know what to do with them yet. I would worry that the robot skeleton is going to, oh man, this is just, T1000 or T800, T1000. We're talking about robots taking over kind of stuff. The science of tissue engineering or growing human cells for use in medicine is very much in its infancy, with only the simplest lab-grown cells able to be used in experimental treatments today. But researchers say a new method of tissue engineering could potentially improve the quality of this work, growing the cells on a moving robot skeleton. This, by the way, is probably the closest that I have heard of us getting to true cybernetics, where it's meat and machine grafted together in a way where we don't basically have to use what amounts to a suction cup on a stump. If we have the ability to merge it together so that everything is free flowing and connected, we could probably eliminate the suffering that a lot of people with amputations or replacement limbs, right? Or like bones. Like you can sometimes have to have a portion of a bone removed because of whatever might be going on. And if we can make it so that human cells graft onto it, then it won't be rejected and you won't have to take suppression medications. Titanium is largely the one where everything is kind of cool. It'll still work with our anatomy, our body. We won't reject it as much. But if we can get it so that it actually coexists and it becomes a stable part of our biology, it would be an amazing jump forward in terms of adapting technology to our biology. This is an article over at The Verge by James Vincent, and it says a new method of tissue engineering is only a proof of concept for now. Yep, for now. Typically, cells used in this sort of regenerative medicine grown in static environments, think petri dishes and miniature 3D scaffolds. A few experiments in the past have shown that cells can be grown on a moving structure like hinges, but these have only been stretched or bent the tissue in a single direction. But researchers at the University of Oxford and robotics firm Devanthro thought that if you want to grow matter designed to move and flex like tendons and muscles, it'd be better to recreate the natural growing environment as accurately as possible. So they decided to approximate a mobile human body. So they made a joint and it kept it moving and growing, and boom, here you go. That looks like a hand. A skeleton was adapted from the open source Roboy model. And that got weird real quick. Here's the big caveat, though. While the team observed changes in the exercising cells that were different from those grown in a static environment, they aren't actually sure yet if those changes were any good. Yeah, maybe it might act like scar tissue and it won't end up being a viable solution. Well, we'll keep an eye on it and see what happens. Tech is always moving forward, science is always moving forward, and that's driving society into really good places, mostly. This is Go Dice. Make game night more fun with these Bluetooth enabled dice. I've seen stuff like this before. When I saw this appear in my aggregator, I figured that I'd talk about it. Don't have much to say. We took a look at these fun new dice to see if they'd be worthy addition to a game night. So let's click the link. The source is Apple Insider. And I love the idea of interactive toys like this. And this is just dice. But I think that it could be fun. And I think I'm going to end up buying these just so that I can kind of whip these out on game night and play a game using this. Amber Neely is the author of this article over at Apple Insider. And again, it's titled Go Dice. A review. Make game night more fun with these Bluetooth enabled dice. And so apparently you can buy them at Amazon. They have a link over at appleinsider.com. So if you find these interesting, compelling, then go over to appleinsider.com and click on the link to buy them via their link. Because I didn't find this. I got this because of my news aggregator. But go and support Apple Insider for what they do. They come in a package in a cool magnetic container that keeps the dice together when not in use. The container also acts as a charger. You simply press the 5 face of the die into the charger's base until it lights up. Once fully charged, which takes about 20 seconds, you get roughly 2 hours worth of play. So, this is neat. This is fun. Go Dice has offered a decent collection of games to play right out of the box. So you can play Backgammon, Yahtzee, Farkle, Ludo, Clash, Pig, Unlucky 7, Shut the Pool, Bomb Squad, Go RPG, Dice Calculator, and more. And I'm sure if you were to develop some idea and pitch it to Go Dice, they may include your game, or like it says here, there's a Go Dice API, which means you can include it into, okay, this is a blast. This just has a lot of fun written all over it. And depending on, they're not cheap. So their price is $120. But if the batteries last forever inside, well, largely forever, nothing lasts forever, but they should last a really good amount of time. But at $120, it's not a cheap product. But if more people purchase it, maybe they can spend some money on evolving these so that they can maintain their profit margin, but still lower the price by changing the materials and production methods while still keeping quality. That's the thing. Keep the quality high, please. Okay, so maybe I'll get these and I'll noodle around with them. You'd have, so somebody posts on their site, you'd have to really hate maths to think this was worth anything. Not really. It's a fun gadget. If you have the disposable amount sitting there and you think that it's really neat, then go for it. Man, I'm not going to stop you, and you can't stop me. It's not that it doesn't make any sense to me. It's $120 for a few dice, but you know, I've spent more on a Kickstarter that still hasn't shown up for 7 years. Hey, if it's a good idea. At any rate, that is it for today. This has been the ohmTown Daily News Show for, I think we're at, 146, right? Yeah, 146. So it's May 26th, 2022. This is episode 146. If you stuck around for all of this, thank you very much. And I always bring us back to the very front page. Click that ohmTown logo. I'm actually trying to get a new logo. We'll see if it actually gets made. I'm having a hard time with envisioning the logo. Um, but yeah, I want to make something a little bit more personal to ohmTown. This is pretty standard fare name there, and design. I mean, it's just the name ohmTown. At any rate, want to thank you all again, and keep on downloading from the podcast and from YouTube. Go check it out over there. Become a member of ohmTown or a citizen of ohmTown by going over to ohmTown.com. You can get this pretty much anywhere that you listen to podcasts. I'm submitting it everywhere automatically now, and I hope that I can get this one done today. But I do have a meeting that I need to get to. I'm already about 5 minutes late, and I'll see you tomorrow. I'm hoping that I'll be able to get it. We'll be able to stream at 1 o'clock, but we'll see. Okay, that's it. Bye bye.